Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football. My name is Scott Morgan. We're at the Motor City Madmouth, along with Ryan Skolrud, and we have another guy to the big show, Alex Fleming. What's going on, Alex?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me on the show. Man, this is my wheelhouse. I miss talking fantasy football.
Well, don't worry. You get a steady diet of it with us, that's for sure. So, Alex, why don't you let everybody know how I came in contact with you. You and I covered the Jacksonville Jaguars, Detroit Lions game over at TIAA Bank Stadium. Of course, we ended up landing over at the racetrack. No, not the Daytona racetrack, but that gas station called a racetrack, until I found out that you were involved with fantasy football. I said, we need to get this guy on the broadcast. All right. Give everybody out there a background of Alex Fleming.
Alex Fleming, raised in an Air Force military background, came from Texas, brand new to Florida, only been here 13 years. I guess I'm now a citizen here. Got tired of waiting tables and waiting on people who didn't like me. Took a chance on myself, and it's paid off for years. Started a show called Fantasy and Flavors about 3 years ago. I write for the Florida Sun Review. Did a very brief stint with the Bucks Report. I don't do fanboy sites no more. I also write for Yahoo Sports and a couple other subsidiaries. I also do some work with Sports Arena. You can also catch me on the Magic Perspective whenever the NBA was in session, because I cover the Orlando Magic, currently write for the Tampa Bay Bucks, and cover the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Well done. All right, there you go, folks. Alex Fleming. Okay. To the big show. All right. Well, with that said, Ryan, what do we got cooking up here? You got some good stuff you're digging up, right?
Yeah, I come to the big show. It sounds like his credentials are far beyond mine. That's okay. I love having the experienced perspectives. All right, so going into the notes. First thing I wanted to cover is all the players that are not practicing right now. So we started off with the QBs. Andy Dalton is still not practicing, so it looks like the Cowboys may not have much of a choice but to go with Ben DiNucci as their starting quarterback this weekend. Andy Dalton was able to show up to the quarterback meeting but was not involved in practice. So as far as I can see, Andy Dalton is not likely to be playing this weekend. So with Ben DiNucci most likely being the starter, that's going to affect Ezekiel Elliott. That's going to affect Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. So I'm downgrading all of them across the board in terms of my rankings. Amari Cooper, I had been near the top 10 pretty much every week. He's moving down to like wide receiver 20 for right now, and possibly even lower, kind of depending on what I'm seeing for this matchup against Philly. I'm not. I think the person that takes the biggest hit is probably CeeDee Lamb. In my opinion, I think that as a quarterback, if it's Ben DiNucci, coming in is more likely to target Schultz at tight end and possibly Ezekiel Elliott out of the backfield. Those short passes, getting off those secondary reads is more likely. And then also going to Amari Cooper. I think that CeeDee Lamb was a top 15 wide receiver many, many weeks this season. That being said, I think that he's really going to fall, at least over these next couple weeks, until and if Andy Dalton comes back. So the other quarterback, Gardner Minshew, dealing with a fracture in his throwing thumb, still unsure of whether or not he is going to play this week. With it, looks like it's Mike Glennon is the backup quarterback in Jacksonville. I have a little bit of trouble trusting anyone in the offense right now for Jacksonville other than James Robinson and his ability to run the ball extremely well. He's been very efficient this year, and his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. Glennon has always been known for his big arm, but not necessarily his accuracy. And so we'll kind of see how that affects wide receivers. But if Minshew is not playing, I'm downgrading basically everyone except for James Robinson, because I think they'll try to depend a little bit more on the run game as far as that goes. So those are the two quarterbacks that I'm seeing so far that in terms of not practicing this week. Running back, we have a lot of the star power in the running backs just not going this week. Aaron Jones is still not practicing with that calf injury. I think it's likely that he may not play again this week. You've got Joe Mixon, who is still dealing with the foot injury and not playing. Christian McCaffrey has officially been announced that he is not coming off IR this week. They're most likely waiting till next week. I think it was pushing it to try to get him this week in week 8. A lot of the projections were for week 9 or week 10 with him coming off IR with the high ankle sprain. Mark Ingram is not practicing. This, for me, doesn't affect so much fantasy because of the fact that even though that Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins will get more playing time, they're going up against Pittsburgh, who is the number 1 or number 2 defense against running backs in fantasy football in terms of not giving up fantasy points. And overall, between the three of them, all have been about running back 30 to 36 on an average basis throughout the season. So they've been splitting up the carries so much, and Lamar Jackson runs the ball so much. It's really taken down some of the efficiency in terms of the running backs overall, in my opinion, for Baltimore. And the offense for Baltimore has not been as explosive this year as it was last year. So the other thing to look at is Chris Carson. It did not practice today. However, Carlos Hyde also did not practice, and Travis Homer did not practice for Seattle, which right now means that the only healthy running back actually practicing is DJ Dallas. So for me, the notes came out earlier today that Carson is a game time decision. Already, they've just marked him as a game time decision for Sunday. I don't know what this means necessarily for Carlos Hyde. I think that Carlos Hyde is likely to play. It could be that because of his veteran status, that they're just making sure to give him the rest time, knowing that if Carson can't go, he's going to be the guy. Travis Homer, I could see them, if he is injured enough, not having him go and having DJ Dallas step in. Overall, Dallas did an okay job this last week stepping in when he needed to, when Travis Homer needed a break after Carson went out early in the game against Arizona. I think the one thing to worry about with DJ Dallas is his run blocking on third downs. So overall, you're looking at most likely another week of Jamal Williams, Gio Bernard. Obviously, with Christian McCaffrey out, Mike Davis has been absolutely blowing up fantasy in terms of his production. And then, again, with the rest of these, we're still a little unsure about what all is going on in terms of Chris Carson and everything with the Seahawks. And then I'm still not quite as high on the running backs for Baltimore this week, mainly because of the matchup. So
you gave me a lot to digest there, sir. You gave me a lot. Let's start with Dallas. Ben DiNucci, James Madison. Haven't really heard much about him, but then again, this is the third string quarterback. I wouldn't really expect much, and it's a division rival in Philadelphia. Let's take a little trip back to memory lane last year, where the Philadelphia Eagles had janitors and concession stand workers going against Dallas for the division crown, and somehow, some way, Philadelphia pulled it out. Now, the only bigger rivalry than Philadelphia-Dallas is Washington-Dallas. So why, for some reason, do I feel that Ezekiel Elliott and CeeDee Lamb are going to have fantasy value this week? Ezekiel's obvious. You're going to need to run the football because you got a third-string quarterback handing the ball off with that Philadelphia defense that actually is legit. The front seven is nice. The secondary, suspect other than Darius Slay. So Zeke's obvious. CeeDee Lamb, guys, is it just me or is he the best wide receiver in that core? Michael Gallup is dropping touchdown passes, and Amari Cooper is overpaid. CeeDee Lamb is on that rookie contract coming out of OU, and the man from Richardson, Texas, is looking like a legit number one. So you know what? I'm cautious with CeeDee Lamb, but I don't think I bench him this week. He's a flex. He doesn't get my wide receiver spots, but he's a flex. And
I would
he's
agree with that.
Flex at that. Cincinnati's playing Tennessee. Tennessee's been pretty good about shutting down the run until they ran into the Pittsburgh Steelers because Connor had an amazing game. Take away Connor's game, Tennessee's not having it. Joe Mixon is what makes that offense run. is basically Joe Burrow's security blanket because he's starting to build rapport with T. Higgins. He's lost all faith in A.J. Green, and Tyler Boyd is up or down. Giovanni Bernard, I would definitely take a flyer on, especially in this year of COVID where everybody needs a running back. And Gio's been waiting to get touches. Mixon has been that feed me back. I think he's actually happy, quote unquote, that Mixon isn't playing so that way Gio can actually get this big contract next year whenever he decides to leave Cincinnati, kind of like how Carlos Dunlap did. Speaking of Carlos Dunlap, who went to Seattle, I have faith that Carlos Hyde is going to play this week. Something about the upside with Carlos Hyde. People seem to forget that he was a 1,000-yard rusher with the Houston Texans. He produced whenever he was a Cleveland Brown. This guy's had issues finding a home ever since he left the San Francisco 49ers. DJ Dallas, rookie. I like what he has to offer, but on that same token, if I'm going to go with the rookie to go with Russell Wilson to pass block and catch passes out of the backfield, or I'm going to go with Carlos Hyde, a journeyman who's actually reliable, I'm going to take a shot with Carlos Hyde because you got to think of San Francisco 49ers week. If you know any Seahawks fans, you know it's Niners week. They take this quite seriously.
Yes, we do.
To run the football. So I'm going to put my money on Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I definitely think that again, Gio Bernard has been more productive when he's gotten the ball this season than Joe Mixon has already. Joe Mixon was one of my early season busts this year. He was one of the guys that I had him, Odell, DJ Moore was one of the guys that I picked as not. Everyone was saying he's going to be a top 13 wide receiver, and he's had a couple weeks that have been great when the matchup played well. But overall, it's been Robbie Anderson has been taking a lot of the production we thought was going to go to DJ Moore. So keeping up with the wide receiver thing here, Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Thomas are both out. Were both out yesterday in terms of practicing. Emmanuel Sanders obviously is still in the COVID restrictions. Michael Thomas did actually practice today. I believe it was a limited practice, so it looks like he likely is on pace to play this weekend. But just be prepared for that last minute is not going to play on Sunday.
Hey Ryan, quick question for you.
Yes.
What about the status with Devonta Freeman? I know you were going to talk about him, so why don't you give me an update with him?
He didn't practice. He actually was it. Let me pull up that real quick. I had that note right here. Devonta practice, I believe, didn't actually practice today with the ankle injury. So going with that, again, I think that with that backfield, if it's going to go to anyone, it's likely to go to Wayne Gallman, who tends to be more of the bruiser back. They do use Dion Lewis in the passing game here and there, but basically skipped right over him this last week when Freeman went out. So if Devonta Freeman doesn't play, Gallman, I believe, is most likely to get a lot of the major work in that game.
Okay, just go back to the wide receivers. I just want to make sure I got him. I wasn't sure about his status. Go ahead.
Sorry, Alex, you were going to say something on that.
I have an issue with the backfield with the New York Giants. Ever since Saquon Barkley went down, how in the hell is Daniel Jones going to be the leading rusher for this team? Wayne Gallman had 34 yards and 1 touchdown. That shouldn't have been a touchdown because Daniel Jones tripped over his own damn feet. Dion Lewis can't run in between the tackles. He does most of his dirty work as a pass-catching back. And Devonta Freeman had 3 carries for a total of 8 yards. If he's on my roster, I'm dropping him. I'd rather have Gustavus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, or even LaMichael Pirine for the New York Jets, Jets. You're not getting any production out of Devonta Freeman. And with Tampa Bay's #1 rush defense, you have to pay me to start Devonta Freeman this week. That's a hail to the no.
Yeah, he was one of those ones that just kind of added on at the end just because the fact that he didn't practice. I play in a couple leagues. I play in a 16-team super flex league and an 18-team PPR league. That news actually does matter for a couple But again, for most people that are playing in 10 to 12 team leagues, the Devonta Freeman is kind of it doesn't matter as much to most, but for those who have the deep, deep leagues and you have no choice with injuries and COVID to start someone like Wayne Gallman, which I have in one of those leagues, had to start Wayne Gallman. You kind of, you take it with a grain of salt. So, all right, moving on to like I said, with the wide receivers. Julian Edelman actually had a knee scope this week, so he is definitely missing this week. Likely is going to miss at least one more, if not two more. So with the New England offense, I am somewhat avoiding. Just Cam Newton has not looked great. Didn't look great the last few weeks since coming off the COVID list. They have struggled to get much of a run game going. There has not been any chemistry really at all in the pass game. N'Keal Harry is not. He's starting to look like, especially in dynasty leagues, as a dynasty league bust. It just hasn't really worked. Now it could be that they haven't found the right combination of quarterback receivers. I don't know, but it's not looking great to me. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
I think it's a combination of a couple of things. People seem to forget that New England had 11 people opt out due to COVID. Now, take into account, before Cam Newton received COVID-19, they were rolling. They were toe-to-toe against Seattle. They were putting up points. Cam Newton, after he came back, has had not one but two bad games. Now, I don't know about you, but I know he's allergic to Denver. So I gave him a pass whenever he looked bad against the Denver Broncos.
That's true.
Last week against the San Francisco 49ers, he threw for a total of 98 yards and had 3 interceptions. If you started him on fantasy, he was worth -2. I don't know too many people who's going to win with the quarterback in the negatives instead of the positive. Julian Edelman was frustrated, and N'Keal Harry's been missing in action. You're absolutely right about that. Damian Harris, Sony Michel, James White, Rex Burkhead. I trust no one in this Patriots backfield. And guys, where the hell is the tight end for the Patriots? Asi?
Ryan Izzo.
Izzo? Where's the tight end? I'm sure Belichick is going to get this fixed, or we're going to see a fire sale in New England very soon. I'm already hearing rumblings about them trying to trade away Stephon Gilmore. So if they lose badly to the Buffalo Bills, in which I expect they to, because Buffalo's been waiting to hand them an ASS whooping for quite some time, I think they're going to take it in, and you're going to see a fire sale soon.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think when last week, I was high on him when he came out of college, even though he came out as an undrafted free agent. But I was high on Jacoby Myers coming into the draft 2 years, last year. And at the same time, when he is your leading receiver with 60 yards, when you have all these other guys who are supposed to be in front of him, you know that offense is struggling. If Jacoby Myers is your leading receiver, I think that in the future, Jacoby Myers can be a great slot guy. That there's problems if he's your leading receiver right now. So I agree with you. I think that it's going to be another tough week for Cam Newton and the New England Patriots going up against the Buffalo Bills this week. So the other two wide receivers I want to mention, AJ Brown did not practice today, but from all accounts, this is more, I think they're just kind of managing his reps with the knee bruise that he's been kind of working through for the last couple of weeks. All indications and things that I have seen is, even though he did not practice today, he's still going to be he's still a full go for Sunday. They're not planning on him. They're not thinking that he's going to miss Sunday. They're just basically managing his reps. So that's why he didn't practice today. And then Deontay Johnson is dealing with a toe injury. It seems like Deontay Johnson is dealing with an injury every week. And so for me, I understand he is a target monster from Big Ben. I mean, he's basically, he has become the wide receiver 1, and Juju is kind of that wide receiver 2, which a lot of people thought he was anyways. So Johnson getting, 10 to 12 targets a game when he's playing. I see something from Alex. Were you one of those guys that thinks that Juju's just a wide receiver 2, possibly a wide receiver 3?
Ryan, we just met, but I have to disagree with you on something. I am a fan of Deontay Johnson, but he's not the wide receiver one. I highly believe the man from Abbotsford, British Columbia, is the true number one of this team, Chase Claypool. Now, in the beginning of the season, Claypool was rarely used because he had to know the playbook due to the fact that there was no preseason. But you have to understand, week 3 and week 6, he busted out like game busters. Week 7, look who was shadowing Chase Claypool. It was Malcolm Butler. He's the number one corner for the Tennessee Titans. Claypool only had one catch for -2 yards, but they used him as a decoy. So much pressure and attention was on Claypool, it allowed Deontay Johnson to have the 2-touchdown game. Now, with the full complement of wide receivers between Claypool, Johnson, Juju, and Washington, I believe Baltimore is going to have issues covering the passing game because they only have 2 shutdown corners in Humphreys or Peters. This is going to be a matchup nightmare. And the second someone neglects Claypool, look for Big Ben to target him. I believe Claypool's the number one out of this crew.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll agree to disagree on that one. I think that I don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely high on Chase Claypool's talent, and for me, I think that he is a guy that's going to get a lot of targets, but I think some of that's going to also depend on who's covering. I think it's going to depend a little bit on who's covering Deontay Johnson, and I think it could go back in. I didn't see as much of the Tennessee game as I would have liked. I didn't realize that Butler was actually shadowing Claypool. So it changes things a little bit for me. At the same time, I'm not as big of a believer in Butler overall, in Butler as a corner, as a pure cover corner. I think it's honestly between Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, it's going to go a bit back and forth. But I believe in the chemistry that Big Ben already has with Johnson. I believe he is the more likely guy to get the steady targets, steady overall targets than Chase Claypool. I think that Chase Claypool is probably going to be more efficient with his targets. But I think that in terms of just the amount of targets overall, if they're both in there, I think Deontay Johnson is likely to get more targets than Claypool.
I agree with that. I think Deontay Johnson's biggest issue has been health.
Correct. And that's why I said in the beginning, he's every week he's got something going. So if he doesn't play, yes, I'm throwing Claypool in every single lineup if I can. But if he is playing, I'm probably going to lean towards Johnson over Claypool because of the target share.
I can agree with that completely. Start your wide receivers for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, not for the faint of heart. I have no idea why this is not a Sunday night matchup. How Philadelphia, Dallas kept that game, I don't know. With that being said, I believe Pittsburgh is going to win this game. Baltimore is coming off a bye. They're going to be nice and young and rich and full of energy. Here's the issue. Everybody knows Baltimore is going to run the ball. Mark Ingram, questionable, probably will not play. They have to turn to Gustavus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. I love J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State, but I don't think he's ready for this smoke. And everybody knows Mark Andrews is a security blanket for Lamar Jackson. Pittsburgh defense, number 2 overall. That's stopping the run, that's stopping the pass. Minka Fitzpatrick and the boys are going to be so serious. Bush going down is going to hurt, but Dupree has stepped up, and that man, T.J. Watt, is going to be having his eyes on El Freaky. I like Pittsburgh in this matchup.
Well, with all due respect, Alex, we're going to do predictions toward the end of the broadcast, but we'll make sure we get to the nuts and bolts first. But at least we have an idea how you tipped your hand in that particular one. So that's okay. I'm enjoying this. It's nice for me to just sit back and be a spectator while two of you experts go at it. I mean, I'm supposed to just take the night off and enjoy this. I don't care, and I am enjoying it. It's the longest I've kept quiet in a long time, and that usually doesn't happen. But it's good stuff. I have a front row seat with you guys. Good stuff. But predictions at the end, Alex.
Candy can thank us later for keeping you quiet. So,
But
all right. Moving on to the Titans. The only tight end injury that I've seen that's really worth noting at all, quote unquote, worth noting, is Jack Doyle not practicing, which means it possibly could open up a little bit of sleeper value, kind of DFS big lottery ticket value for someone like Mo Alley Cox if you're needing a whole lot of if you're wanting to build up on your DFS with lineup with some wide receivers and running backs, you want a real value tight end. Depending on it, Mo Alley Cox is a guy that can he's touchdown dependent, but he and Trey Burton overall get about the same amount of targets a game, and so with Jack Doyle out, I think it could split pretty even between them, and so I think they could possibly be lottery ticket type sleepers for a DFS matchup. So again, that's the only tight end injury quote unquote worth noting that I could see so far. The last couple things I had to mention, looks like Antonio Brown, according to Bruce Arians, will be ready week 9. He has already started to practice with the team. I think for right now, the only person that really takes any value away from right now is Scotty Miller, because of the fact that I believe Chris Godwin is kind of back and forth on his health right now. I think that AB is likely to take over a lot of the production from Scott Brown, which I loved having, or Scotty Miller, which I loved having Scotty Miller as a sleeper in a couple of lineups. It's been really nice to see what he's been able to do. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how the 3 wide receivers kind of spread out the ball. That's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that. I'm sure, Alex, you have plenty of thoughts on this one. So
Let
for
me
me,
in.
I think it's and with how much Mike Evans hasn't been getting the ball when Chris Godwin is in the lineup, I almost kind of feel like AB could kind of take over the number 1 role. So that's kind of my thoughts there. So Alex, go ahead.
Let's pump the brakes on AB being the number 1. Number 1, Bruce Arians has already said that last game Mike Evans didn't touch the ball until the 4th quarter. Game before that, Chris Godwin didn't get catches until the second half. If Antonio Brown has any issues with not getting targeted, he can leave this team right now. Bruce Arians has made it absolutely perfectly crystal glass clear that you should be happy to be in the room. You are not going to be the number 1. You are not going to be the primary target. You're happy that you got signed by us in the first place. You can thank Tom Brady for that. So any talk about Antonio Brown being the number 1, let's have that escape. Number 2, Chris Godwin is not going to play this Monday against the Giants. They probably don't need him against the Giants, to speak completely. The Tampa Bay Bucks have too many weapons. The Giants can't stop the run. Ronald Jones is running like a madman. Leonard Fournette is the hammer. Ronald Jones is the sickle. And people seem to forget about Keyshawn Vaughn, the man from Vanderbilt, who runs a 4.52 40 and can bust one at any time. The tight end rotation. Other than Blake Martinez, the Giants linebackers can't cover you or me. Rob Gronkowski, Cameron Brate, and nice and quietly Tanner Hudson are all mismatches when it comes to the linebacker secondary core of the Giants. Number 3, Mike Evans, still the number 1 of that team. The number 2 is Godwin. He won't be playing Monday night. Number 3 will be Antonio Brown, but he's not eligible until week 9 against the Saints. So look for Scotty Miller and Mr. Johnson from Minnesota to wreak havoc against those Giants corners. I happen to know the Giants corners. Between Christian Angulo and Mr. Darnay Holmes, it's going to be a long night because Brady has beef against the New York Giants personally. And I
don't
think,
know why.
I have no idea why. But I do believe Brady is going to complement all of these weapons. The one main reason why they got Antonio Brown, other than the fact that Tom Brady wanted him on the team, they needed a Saints killer. Look at all the games that Antonio Brown has had against the Saints. For some odd reason, he loves giving it to the Saints. And they need a matchup nightmare. Lattimore, Jenkins, Janoris Jenkins, or Malcolm, they can't handle AB. AB's role is going to be to stretch the field and to take away a number 1 or number 2 corner. But don't get it twisted. Mike Evans' production is going to go down. His touchdowns are going to go up. He's getting double-teamed every game.
All right. Moving on to the last couple things I had. Dalvin Cook was limited in practice, but as from all accounts, looks like he's going to play. And against a Green Bay defense that gives up the second most amount of fantasy points to running backs, Dalvin Cook should be in for a pretty good game. But that doesn't mean that Minnesota is still going to be competitive in this game, in my opinion. with their defense, I still think that the Green Bay passing offense is going to, in my opinion, still make mincemeat out of the Minnesota defensive backfield, who gives up the second most amount of fantasy points to wide receivers. So, for me, I think that I think that Dalvin Cook's going to be in for a solid game as long as he plays. Here's the thing: if he doesn't, and it's Alexander Mattison, I think that Alexander Mattison could put up a decent amount of points, but I wouldn't go overboard on people thinking that he's going to be a top 10 running back automatically. People made that mistake a couple weeks ago, and it didn't work out so well for him against Atlanta. So, again, he is much better as a complementary back than he is being thrust into the starting role if Dalvin Cook misses. So for those of you who have Dalvin Cook, again, I think that Dalvin Cook is going to be most likely, at least a top 10 running back this week at minimum, if he plays. So,
how much faith do you have in Dalvin Cook's health? That's been the biggest issue with Dalvin Cook. Because when he's healthy, of course, you start him, you set it and forget it. But he's injury prone.
He is. He is one of those guys, again, that every year I pass by in the draft or have been fortunate enough to be far enough back in the draft in the first round that he's usually gone by the time it's my turn to pick, so I don't have to worry about it. But he's usually one of those guys that I'm always, because of his innate ability to get injured and stay injured for a little while, I just try to avoid having to deal with that for a season. So I'm very much risk averse when it comes to injury prone guys and guys that every year have a tendency to get nicked up for 2 to 3 weeks or have had a couple of major injuries. So yeah, I'm with Dalvin Cook, I think that again, he's limited. He's looking towards being able to play. I think that he will most likely play. And again, if he plays, I'm willing to still put him around running back 10 to 8, somewhere in that area for this week and a half point PPR in my rankings.
I'm a big fan of matchups make fights. I'm not disagreeing with Dalvin Cook. If he's healthy, I'm playing him. But you know what? JJ has been dynamite. This man out of LSU has been wreaking havoc against bad secondaries. What do the Green Bay Packers have? A bad secondary. Last week, Justin Jefferson had 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, keep in mind, yes, it was a bye week last week, and then they had Atlanta. My apologies. But the last time Minnesota played, Justin Jefferson lit up Atlanta. Now, I'm not saying the Green Bay Packers secondary is as bad as Atlanta. We all know no one's secondary is as bad as Atlanta. But he is a matchup nightmare. And unlike week 1, whenever Green Bay played Minnesota, it is now week 8. And I believe Justin Jefferson has complemented the playbook, gotten used to where he's at on the field, and he's going to wreak havoc against that secondary of Jair Alexander and King. I think people should put a flyer on Justin Jefferson if there hasn't already been one.
Let me pull up my rankings real quick. I actually think that I have Justin Jefferson as a top 20 running back, as a top 20 wide receiver this week. And he's one of those guys that I've stopped taking him out of the top 20. Yeah, I have him as wide receiver 15 for this week. So he is definitely a guy that I am very high on pretty much every week. No matter what the matchup is, simply because of his ability. So let's see. I think I only had like one or two more notes. John Brown is back fully practicing again, which I think the only person that really affects overall is maybe a little bit of play towards Cole Beasley, who has been a little bit of a target monster the last couple weeks. That being said, Cole Beasley is still in the top 20 in terms of red zone targets in the league. And that's not just for wide receivers. That's top 20 for wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs. So Cole Beasley is still a guy that Josh Allen is looking at even towards the red zone. So Cole Beasley now, let me see if I don't have this written down, but I went over this last week because he was one of my sleepers last week. Cole Beasley now has, in the last 20 games, only had 3 games since the beginning of 2019 when he first joined the Buffalo Bills, has only had 3 games where he hasn't had at least 9 points in full point PPR. And this season has only had 1 game out of 7 where he is not, so 1 game out of 6, 1 game out of 7, where he has not had at least 4 targets. And in that 1 game, he still had 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown. So he's been a very steady wide receiver 3 every week. So he is one of those guys that if you need help in your flex, there's no reason why Cole Beasley, even in a 10 to 12 team league, there's no reason that Cole Beasley shouldn't be at least a flex consideration just about every week. So
I find Cole Beasley to be a little bit touchdown dependent. Just a touchdown dependent. Now, we all know the man in Buffalo is Stephon Diggs. I don't think that's
Correct.
even questionable.
Correct.
He's been eating. That's why he leads the league in reception yards. DeAndre Hopkins and DK Metcalf are now chasing him. Terry McLaurin is 4th, by the way. But after Diggs, Beasley's been gaining traction because John Brown has been out. Now that Smokey Brown is back, look for Josh Allen to use his full complement of wide receivers. Enter in Gabriel Davis, UCF alum, can stretch the field, and he's crafty. I'm telling you, in Supermarket Sweep, he's shoplifting. I would take a flyer on Gabriel Davis. Keep an eye on him. Look for Cole Beasley to get implemented, just like you said, in the red zone. But from the 20 to 20, if it's not Diggs, I want Brown or Davis. There's a lot of fantasy value in Buffalo. Too bad it's not at the running back position. Both Zach Moss and Devin Singletary have both been disappointing this year.
I would agree with you there. I think it's I was expecting a little more out of Singletary to be involved at least in the passing game, and that just hasn't been the case. So I'm in full agreement with you there. The only other thing that I had left on my notes was the Mo Alley Cox is back at practice, and again, that was more kind of, I referenced that earlier in terms of him possibly being like a value tight end to use in DFS lineups if you're looking to really overload on quarterbacks, wide receivers, and quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs, and wanted a real value tight end. I think that he is again one of those lottery ticket kind of guys that's again touchdown dependent. But could provide a good value if, again, depending on how you set up your lineup and you want to load up in other positions. So I said on here I was going to cover a couple of sleepers, but we've kind of already we've gone pretty well in depth on a lot of the rosters. The real quote unquote sleepers I wanted to cover this week, and really not much of a sleeper in my opinion at this point. Though in terms of fantasy pros and their expert consensus, I think enough guys just haven't really adjusted their lineup, their rankings yet for the weekend. Derek Carr, I am right now higher on him than most of the expert consensus. I think I have him as a quarterback 10, going up against the Cleveland defense. Their defense is practically non-existent as well. Looking up just in terms of fantasy points given up per game, they give up the 3rd most to wide receivers, the 7th most to quarterbacks, and to go along with Derek Carr, who has been very efficient as of late, Nelson Aguilar, who over the last few weeks has turned into the number one wide receiver for the Raiders. Now, a lot of that has been because of injury. And so I think that Ruggs could still put up. Is Ruggs even – I haven't seen an injury report on Ruggs if he's actually officially back this week.
Ruggs is good.
Is he good?
Ruggs
So,
good. Ruggs got shut down against that Tampa Bay D last week. They had a safety over the top, and they put Carlton Davis on him. So, yeah, he was snug like a baby in a blanket. And that's
one of the things I think that Aguilar is getting open because of the attention given to Ruggs. And I think that could, again, continue this week against Cleveland. So Nelson Aguilar is definitely a guy that most of the experts on Fantasy Pros have him around wide receiver 40. I don't see why he shouldn't be in at least the top 30. Just, again, because of how bad this defense is and with what they're doing in the pass game, I still think that he is a guy that should be, again, at least flex considered for your lineups this week.
Here's what I find funny about the Las Vegas Raiders. They got shut down in the fourth quarter against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Bucks scored 21 points, 3 touchdowns, if you will, in the fourth quarter. Other than that, it was pretty close. Cleveland's secondary is the issue because that front seven is legit. You can't run much against the Cleveland Browns front because Myles Garrett is playing out of his mind. Once you get past that front seven, that secondary can be had. Denzel Ward's been beat quite a few times, and there's a lot of people on that defense that you probably can't name their names. But I want to switch it up. Let's not talk about the Cleveland defense. Let's talk about the new addition on the Cleveland offense. Now, everybody thinks they're going to regress on offense because they're missing OBJ due to the fact that he's out for the season. Wrong. I believe Baker Mayfield is actually going to have a better season not having OBJ. Rashad Higgins, paging Rashad Higgins. I believe Rashad Higgins is going to be fantasy relevant and going to become a superstar, being the number 2 to Jarvis Landry. Oh, and don't sleep on Harrison Bryant. Now that they don't have to go with the double wide receiver set with OBJ and Jarvis Landry, look for them to have power packages with Kareem Hunt, double tight end sets with Njoku and Harrison Bryant, and Landry and Mr. Higgins pulling in work. I think this is an addition by subtraction.
I've heard that all week too. So I realize Odell Beckham Jr. certainly is an impact player, but every so often, run across a situation where if a guy goes down, another guy gets an opportunity. And this seems to be one of those situations where indeed, Alex, what you're saying is totally on target.
Yeah, Odell, I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to look to see what his actual, what his targets per game were. Oh, I've got it right there. He was averaging 6.1. Well, he's now at 6.1 targets per game. But he was 10, 6, 6, 8, 9, and then 2 weeks in a row, 3, and then he gets injured in week 7. Really, again, I agree with you because it looked like Baker was forcing the ball to Odell when he didn't need to. And after Odell went out, he was spreading the ball all over the place. He was trying to find the open guy, not forcing it to Odell. And so I am very much in agreement with you that I think that, again, addition by subtraction, and I think it's going to get even better for Baker, which in the beginning of the season, Baker was doing really well when he had both Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So when Chubb can come back and they get back to both of those running backs, making the run game that much better, I think that that's going to take even more pressure off of Baker Mayfield and allow him to spread the ball to whoever he wants.
Yeah, well, I always say in the NFL, next man up, and indeed that's what you've got here. I've been covering enough NFL games through the years. Alex doesn't realize the first guy I ever worked with was a guy by the name of Don Shula. Ever heard of him?
I've heard of Don.
Yeah, I figured you probably did. And, of course, when I was in my heyday with the Lions, I had a guy by the name of Wayne Fonts. Ever heard of him? Oh, Wayne was a blast to deal with. Hey, come on, man. I have some Tampa blood in me. This thing called the U.S. South University of South Florida ring. I'm a Bulls alumni. I'm wearing this FAU hat because I'm covering the FAU against University of Texas San Antonio over the weekend. So,
There you go.
yeah, we'll be over at FAU Stadium for those of you that are interested. Here you go. Go Owls. Beat the Roadrunners if there's a game, if COVID-19 doesn't get in the way. Of course, nowadays we never know what's going to happen. Another day for another story. On an earlier broadcast today, I ripped Nebraska up because they're whining about not playing a non-conference game because their game against Wisconsin got canceled. Why am I saying this? Because number one, folks, yes, I'm on the broadcast, but I'm watching these two heavyweights go out there and talk fantasy, so I'll slip a little bit here and there. But I have some Tampa blood, proud University of South Florida graduate. Go ahead, guys, pick it up. Just thought I'd get that out there.
No, and that was pretty much it for my notes for tonight. So.
All right, so what we're going to do now is this portion of the program, since Alex is the new kid on the block, okay, is we get to make some predictions, okay, and I even added one. But I love it, the fact that Alex is proactive, okay, so he's going to get used to the groove here. We're breaking him in the right way. Ryan, what do you think of our newest edition?
I'm loving this. I like someone who doesn't agree with me. I appreciate someone who doesn't always agree with me. It makes me that much better, and it makes me actually think about what I'm saying. So I appreciate the fact that he is here.
I don't bring on stiffs on this network, please. Every now and then, maybe some guy may or may not work out, but that's far and few between. I bring on thoroughbreds, man. You guys are thoroughbreds. You know, I do enough of these broadcasts a week. At least the one thing I can guarantee when I'm on with Ryan and Alex, I won't lose my voice or get laryngitis with you two guys going at it. So, with that said, I've got 7 games we're going to talk about, make predictions. And now, Alex, you can give it all you got, and as they always say, and go ahead and break it down any way you want. All right, we're going to start off with a heavyweight fight between the Pittsburgh Steelers 6-0 against the Baltimore Ravens 5-1. I'll let you guys, whoever leads off this time, the other one leads, and then when you guys are done, I'll slip my prediction in. All right, who's leading off with this ball game?
Go ahead, Alex. You already had strong opinions about this one.
I'm a big fan of El Freaky. I love the Baltimore Ravens organization, and they are coming off a bye. Here's my issue. They don't have a deep threat, and he's not throwing the ball deep. Lamar Jackson is barely a top 12 quarterback, and that's only because of his passing and rushing production. Everybody knows Mark Andrews is going to get the ball. He does most of his dirty work in the red zone areas. In between the 20s, it's a little bit of an issue. Mark Ingram won't play. He's been missing in action. They should find him on a milk carton. And I love Mr. Ingram. Gus the Bus Edwards is not Mark Ingram. Do you trust J.K. Dobbins? I don't know. That Pittsburgh defense is legit. Between T.J. Watt, Bud Dupree, and Minkah Fitzpatrick, I see them having issues running the football and passing down the field. Bye be damned. Plus, what the hell is the Baltimore defense going to do whenever they have to stop Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and James Washington? Don't sleep on the number 4. Oh, and by the way, Connor is coming to terminate that defensive line. Now, is Ngakoue going to be in shape to go with Calais to have Saxonville 2.0 in Baltimore? I'm not quite sure. But I know Big Ben came back to go to a Super Bowl. And they have never been undefeated since 1978. I like the Steelers.
All right, you know what? Since we have this format, nobody has to give a score. Just give the outright pick who you're going to win, and we can leave the point spreads out of it. So, all right, you got the Steelers. All right, Ryan, what do you got?
I think I've got the Steelers too. The overall, while the defense has still been solid for the Baltimore Ravens overall, the offense has just not been the explosive entity that it was last year. And so, like Alex was saying, especially with the tight end with Andrews. Andrews, again, he is not. They don't pass the ball a lot. I mean, they ran the ball a ton last year, but still, it seemed like they were passing the ball more often than they were this year. Hollywood Brown is not getting the ball. He's not as explosive this year as he was as he had games last year. It was extremely inconsistent when he was having big games, but that's just. I mean, he just hasn't had those games this year. And Mark Andrews, he actually averages the same amount of targets per game as Austin Hooper and Hayden Hurst. So he's only getting 5.5 targets a game. Mark Andrews is. So again, he is very red zone dependent. So with how well Pittsburgh shuts down the run game overall, I think it's going to be a struggle for Lamar Jackson. So I definitely have Pittsburgh winning this one.
All right, and I'll make my prediction short and sweet so we can move on to the next one. I'm going Pittsburgh. We'll make it a clean sweep here. I really like the way the Steelers are playing, and you know what? I know we could see this matchup later on in the playoffs, and of course they face each other, twice a year? Is that correct, I think?
Yep.
So these teams will see plenty of each other this year. So I'm going with Pittsburgh. Next game, the Las Vegas Raiders 3-3 against the Cleveland Browns 5-2. All right, Ryan, why don't you take it from here, and then I'll be the last one here. Go ahead.
Looking at kind of how the defenses have performed, again, looking at from a fantasy perspective, the Cleveland Browns have struggled in the pass game defensively, but the Las Vegas Raiders have also struggled a lot, and not just in the pass game, but also in the run game. They give up the 4th most amount of points to quarterbacks, the 3rd most amount of fantasy points per week to running backs, and they're the 9th most to wide receivers. So their whole defense is getting shredded every week. Can the Raiders offense keep up with the amount of points that their defense is going to give up? Again, and looking again at how, like we were talking about earlier, with how efficient the Cleveland offense looks when now that OBJ is gone, and how Baker's been able to spread the ball around, I like Cleveland to win this game again. I like them to go to 6-2, and the Las Vegas Raiders to drop to 3-4.
This game is a toss-up to me because there's two entities that we're not talking about. I agree with you. I believe Baker is going to get this offense on point, and they're going to score points. We're in 100% agreement. I think Josh Jacobs is a little bit upset that he was shut down against that Tampa Bay Bucs defense. And I can say firsthand, Tampa Bay's defense is a hell of a lot better than Cleveland's defense. I truly do believe that Jacob is going to bust out. He's got 5 touchdowns on the season. Week 1, he busted out 96 yards, had 3 touchdowns. A couple of weeks ago, before the bye, he had 2 touchdowns. He's due. Jacobs has a big game, but I agree. Cleveland pulls out the victory.
Well, I'll make it a clean sweep. I like the Browns, if for no other reason. The ball will get spread out and get spread out well. Kevin Stefanski's done a really good job in Cleveland, so it's safe to say there won't be a coaching change by on the lake this time. So Stefanski's done a good job. He's affected really 2 franchises, Cleveland and Minnesota. Now, we're not going to get into the Minnesota-Green Bay game. I'm just saying he's affected too. Minnesota could use him. Cleveland has him. They spread the ball out. Cleveland Browns are 6-2. We'll right down I-95 here. Okay, Alex, we've got the Los Angeles Rams 5-2 against the Miami Dolphins 3-3. Do you guys smell upset here with Tua Tagovailoa under center for the Dolphins? All right, go ahead. You lead off, Alex. We're going to rotate back and forth.
Do people remember what Ryan Fitzpatrick and them boys did against the San Francisco 49ers when everybody thought San Francisco was going to railroad Miami? Wrong. Well, now we have Tua Tagovailoa starting his first ever NFL career start against Aaron Donald and the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I don't know how much faith you have with Brian Flores, but he would not be making an irrational move unless he had a plan.
Right.
And I believe Miami has a plan. Upset special. I got Miami.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I think that the offense for Miami has been able to move the ball around well enough with Ryan Fitzpatrick. They wouldn't be making this change if they didn't feel that it wasn't going to be advantageous to them. So the Rams defense has played really well against terrible offenses. Their 5 wins, the Rams' 5 wins, are against the Chicago Bears, who are a horrible offense, and the 4 teams in the NFC East. Those are their 5 wins. I think that the Rams, I think that the Dolphins' offense can provide enough to make this a very good game. That being said, I still lean a little bit towards the Rams. I know that the defense for the Dolphins is great. Their defensive secondary, the corners are great and could really match up well against Woods and Kupp. I still think that the Rams will sneak a win out of this one, but I think it'll be close.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going with the Dolphins for some reason. It's just a hunch. And sometimes when you make hunches, but don't expect me to be the ultimate prognosticator. Because if I told you how I've gagged the last few weeks, you'd probably think if that's what he's got to say, I'm going the other way. Nevertheless, Brian Flores has a plan. Tua Tagovailoa, to me, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And now the matter of when will take place on Sunday at what I call Joe Robbie Stadium. I'll give the Dolphins a win, too.
As a Seahawks fan, I will be giddy if the Miami Dolphins win. Don't get me wrong.
Sure you will. Yeah. I think so. I have a feeling you'll be rooting for the Dolphins, even though you probably figure that your prediction is what it is. All right, that's fair.
Yes.
All right, let's go to the New Orleans Saints against the Chicago Bears. I know that stadium all too well. Once upon a time, I covered games at Soldier Field before they had the shell around the actual structure. All I can tell you guys is this. It gets cold any time of the year when you got Lake Michigan gusting in. I can remember many times going there with thermal underwear, 3 pairs of socks underneath my hiking boots, and a whole lot of clothing up, and they allowed me on the field over at Soldier Field. And I didn't care how badly I sweat in the press box. I knew I wasn't sweating on the field. So you got New Orleans and Drew Brees against Chicago, Nick Foles. All right, you guys fight for it. Who's predicting this one next?
Here's the deal. I still like the Saints to win this one. I just don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. I think the defenses both play well enough, and I think that Chicago can really disrupt New Orleans. Drew Brees struggles in outdoor games, especially in the cold. I think the thing. Again, addition by subtraction, I think the thing that helps Drew Brees is the fact that he has Alvin Kamara to catch the ball out of the backfield. And not, again, he doesn't necessarily have to push the ball downfield. Again, this is going to be a close one. I think that the Saints can win it. I don't know. This is a toss-up for me. I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game overall. I'll go with the Bears.
You know what? Now we got a Brett Favre out in the Pacific Northwest. I was waiting for him to waffle. Hey, Ryan, let me give you a little lesson here. There's a difference between an outdoor game, okay? Then there's a difference between an outdoor game and Soldier Field. Just remember that.
And really, it's the. I think for me, I think it was the weather is the final thing
Yeah,
for Drew Brees.
Ryan's
overall. I think that's probably going to be the thing that pushes it over. Again, I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. I think it's going to be competitive down to the wire, but I think the defense of the Bears can probably be enough to win this one.
So Ryan Skolrud, just so you know, folks, okay, this is Halloween weekend, so his costume happens to be Brett Favre, and he's waffling. So Ryan Skolrud dressing up as Brett Favre, waffling, all I need to say. Go ahead there, Alex.
Dia de los Martes. That's November 1st. They celebrate that in Chicago. I know because I'm a kid who was born and raised in Chicago. Here's what people aren't realizing. There won't be a Michael Thomas. There won't be an Emmanuel Sanders. Jared Cook is a 50-50 coin flip. And you're going to tell me after the way the Chicago Bears defense got ran on that they're going to let Alvin Kamara chew them up and spit them out? Hail to the no. Oh, and due to the fact that there's not going to be any wide receiver problems because Austin Carr and Juwan Johnson is going to be the starting wide receivers with Josh Hill, look for Fuller and Johnson from Utah to have some corner blitzes. By the way, who holding Mack? Who got Mack? Now, that offensive line of the New Orleans Saints is great against the NFC South. They had problems stopping the San Francisco 49ers last year with the blitz and stopping penetration. The Chicago Bears defense is scandal-proof, like R. Kelly before the tapes. I like Chicago because Jimmy Graham is a matchup nightmare with the linebackers of the New Orleans Saints. Can you smell comeback game for Big D Knowles?
Well, I'll keep my prediction short and sweet. Chicago, end of story. And I've given you my feelings about Soldier Field. It gets cold, and you know what? It'll be November 1st, so it really gets cold, especially from a team that plays indoors. Take it from somebody that knows, that's covered a team for many years that's played indoors, that I will get to at the end of this broadcast. All right? San Francisco, Seattle, Ryan's neck of the woods. Obviously, he doesn't have to waffle with his choice with the hat. But all right, Alex, go ahead. You steal his thunder before Mr. Farver, disguised as Skolrud or whatever, gets involved. All right, go ahead, Alex.
No Raheem Mostert, maybe no Tevin Coleman. Doesn't really matter. I believe it's going to be Jermichael Hasty and Jerick McKinnon. No Deebo Samuel. So now they have to rely on Brandon Ayuk. And the best thing Jimmy Garoppolo did last year was hand off the football. That Seattle defense is atrocious, but I even think that they know that George Kittle is going to be the man to stop. Oh, and speaking of Seattle, when was the last time Russell Wilson had a 3-interception game? Exactly. Seattle, big time.
Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, I definitely think Seattle makes a bit of a comeback after last week. One of the things that does hurt is that Jamal Adams is still not practicing, so he's still not going to be involved in the defense. I think that, again, Seattle's going to give up a ton of points. It's what they do. Unfortunately it's how they're set up because they don't have a pass rush. I think if they had a pass rush, it would allow the defensive backs to be a little bit more aggressive. But the Seattle defense, if there is one quote unquote good thing about them, is that they do a serviceable job at stopping the run, which is about the only thing right now that Jimmy Garoppolo is really good at, is handing, like you said, Alex, handing the ball off. So I think that, again, because I am a Seahawks fan and know that no matter what it happens, it's going to come down to a final possession. I still think the Seahawks win. I'm not necessarily seeing a blowout because I haven't seen a blowout in a long time from these Seahawks. So I think it's going to come down. Again, it'll be a final possession thing that I think the Seahawks win.
Well, I'll just say Seattle wins. They're not losing 2 in a row. Next game, Dallas against Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love in the division that who knows who wants what, when, where, why, and how. But they got to play the game anyhow. Dallas is on their Mucho Dinero. Is that what the third is? I don't even know what it is anymore. All I know is that they're on their third quarterback, and who knows what they'll be for. And who knows if Andy Dalton will get out in time, although I'm not holding my breath. Anyways, with me saying that, okay, Dallas or Philadelphia, who's got it first? And I'll tell you who's got it last.
Okay, fine.
Oh, wait, is it my turn? Yeah, it is my turn on this one. My bad. Philadelphia. There's not much to say. I don't think that that DiNucci is really going to be that effective. Again, this is a defense that is middle of the road in Philadelphia overall in terms of yards given up. But the Dallas defense is so bad. I think that even Travis Fulgham can have a huge game against the Dallas defense. So for me, I don't see a whole lot of ways that the Cowboys win this one. I know I get it. It's a division game. I'm still going Philadelphia on this one. So.
All right, Alex.
You guys ever watch that show Hoarders, where there's like trash everywhere, and you just ask, how did it get so bad? This is the NFC East, ladies and gentlemen. This is the division that has the most Super Bowls. And now we've come to this. It's really 2020.
Oh, like Super Bowl, man.
I mean, it's just bad. Now, I agree. I believe Philadelphia is going to win this game, but for some odd reason, I believe this is going to be closer than intended. The fact that it's in the vet gives Philadelphia the advantage. You can pass on Philly. You can run on Philly. And the fact that we don't know a damn thing about Ben DiNucci makes me think that he's going to test some of these Philadelphia corners. I have Philadelphia. I am not watching this game.
Well, all right. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think they still play at Veterans Stadium?
No, it's Lincoln Financial.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, then I had enough Diet Mountain Dew to make sure what stadium that I'm not suffering from a disease called dementia. It's DUMBMENTIA. And I made it up, by the way.
I believe bad football like this dumbs people down.
Oh, that's
NFC
true.
leagues should be banned.
If you've ever been to the vet, it's definitely an interesting place, and you'll never go because it's not there anymore. But take it from somebody that's been there. Okay, they're not nice. They call it the city of brotherly love. I have my way. It's a city of brotherly hate. Go figure. All I can tell you
Do
is
they have a jail inside of the stadium?
Actually, most
they did,
most
actually.
stadiums do.
yeah, they do.
Most stadiums have them.
Yeah, and they call it the city of brotherly love. Blue Santa Claus. So be it. I never understood the other day why they booed Rob Manfred after the World Series, but I certainly know that they
Because
don't
he's the
go ahead and
commissioner.
mention how they boo in Philadelphia. I'll just say that Philadelphia, and I think they're going to beat Dallas handily. If Washington beat Dallas handily, I can tell you right now, Philadelphia is going to lay a whooping on them too. So, and I think Philadelphia will pick up steam, and I think they're going to run away with that division. All right, and the final game of the night, Indianapolis Colts against the Detroit Lions. Of course, Ryan knows I throw a Lions game in here at the end, and I'm not changing my stripes now. So, all right, Alex, go ahead. You got the horseshoe, or do you have the roar?
I like what Detroit is doing. I just don't like their coach. Matt Patricia, a.k.a. Chuck E. Cheese, has made a lot of questionable decisions. Indianapolis has just come off of a bye week.
All right.
Tampa, Pittsburgh, Indy, top three defenses. For some odd reason, I believe Phillip Rivers is going to be comfortable behind this offensive line that's ranked number 1 in fantasy football focus. Jonathan Taylor is going to learn how to run the football, something that Gardner Minshew, James Robinson, and them boys in Jacksonville couldn't figure out how to do. And for some odd reason, I believe we're going to get a T.Y. Hilton sighting. Maybe I'm crazy. Call me now for your free reading. I like Indianapolis.
Yeah, well, I saw T.Y. Hilton play at Florida International University against FAU one time. It was like 57-50. FAU won in overtime. And I knew this kid was going to be a stud. But and I love Jonathan Taylor. I really do. I think he's a heck of a player, and I think they'll appreciate him there. So, all right, Ryan, go ahead.
Alex, I'm with you on this one. And for me, it's not even so much looking at the offenses. It's looking at this Colts defense that has been their number 2 in the league in yards given up, or as in best in terms of yards given up. They've given up the second least amount of points to quarterbacks in fantasy football, the 6th least amount of points to running backs in fantasy football, and the least amount of points to tight ends. I think that TJ Hawkinson is in for a tough game this week. I think that the offense or the defense overall for the Colts, I think will show some of the weaknesses in this Detroit offense. And so for me, coming at it from that perspective, I think that the defense of Indianapolis is going to be more of a factor overall than I think even the offense for Indianapolis. So I think that Indianapolis Colts win this one.
All right, well, the Lions are 0-3 at home, 3-0 on the road. But you know what? Oh, the Lions will win anyways. Who cares? They're bound to get one. Hopefully this is a one. And the Detroit Lions have a very winnable schedule in the month of November. And remember, Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn are both on the hot seat. So if they're going to make an impression with the new owner, then they better do it if they want to save themselves from that thing called a pink slip, because they're chomping at the bit to get rid of these two Belichick clowns. So I'll give the Lions a win at Ford Field anyways. You guys are going with the Colts, and chances are you guys are probably right, but you know what? I'll have a differing opinion, and when we do this bad thing next week, you guys can stick it to me anyways, because the only thing I'll guarantee when you two guys are on the broadcast tonight, I don't lose my voice watching you guys. It's a blast. So, all right, with that said, okay, That concludes this edition of Fantasy Football with Ryan Skolrud, myself, Scott Morganoff, Motor City Madmouth, and Alex Fleming. But before we go off the air, okay, we're going to give Alex an opportunity to let everybody know how they get over. Ryan will do the same, and then we'll have a COVID message and a voting message before we give our information on the back end. Alex, since you're the new kid on the block, go out there and spit it out there and let them all know how they can find you. And we're glad to have you on the broadcast every week. You've earned an opportunity. Ryan, first of all, before he gets going, do you think he's earned another opportunity to join us? We come up with a good three-man booth there?
I think he's all right.
Oh, I think he's okay. All right, Alex, take it away. No, I'm not talking to Alex Trebek. I'm talking to Alex Fleming. That lays, we're not playing Jeopardy, folks. Just kidding with you. Had to have a game show reference in there. And Alex Trebek was the only Alex that came up in mind that stood. So, all right, go ahead.
Florida Sun Review, Central Florida's oldest black living newspaper. I write sports. I love sports. I cover sports. You can catch my latest article. The Jaguars needed a spa day after leaving LA. Yeah, that's me. No, I'm not high in the picture. Florida Sun Review, Fantasy and Flavors is my page on Facebook. You can also catch me doing work with the Sports Arena. I just did a show tonight called The Carousel. It takes people from across the country and the globe, and they talk about their NFL team and who's hot. Copywritten. Don't copy me. You can also catch me every now and then on the Bucks Report. And, of course, you can catch me with Mr. Morganroth covering the Jacksonville Jaguars. In the not-so-distant future, you might actually see me at the Pro Bowl and the NFL Combine. On Twitter, I am ALXFLMNG, Alex Fleming. No vowels. I write all the time. I'm dyslexic. What can I say?
No, I think you're pretty good. And I found this guy over at the racetrack gas station in Ormond Beach, even though he's in the same press box with me. Go figure. All right, Ryan, take it away. That's pretty good.
All right, you can find us overall at SkullKingSports.com, where we have all of our fantasy articles. You can also find our podcast as well as a couple of other podcasts in our podcast network at Skull King Sports. You can find me on Facebook as well as any of our Skull King pages and groups. Just type in Skull King Sports, one word, Skull King. Skull King Sports, you can find pages and groups based on the sport that you're really wanting to get into. You can also find us on Twitter at Skull King Sports. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan Skolrud, and you can also find us on Instagram, Skull King Sports. We also have a YouTube channel that you can find as Skull King Sports Fantasy Football Podcast. So that is it for me.
All right. Well, as far as we're concerned, we have a grocery list of stuff, okay? And we'll start where it all really starts. You can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. That's the @ Tribune South. Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune gets it done. YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune, for what you will watch this broadcast when you subscribe to this YouTube channel. That's where you'll be able to find this. And I'll give you 6 good reasons why you should subscribe to it. We have the Sports Exchange, No Limits, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, the Real and the Rare Fantasy Football, which you are watching, okay, and South Florida Tribune Podcast. So all of those broadcasts will be on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe to that. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We have the Motor City Monitor, where we do cover a lot of Detroit sports as well. Southeastern Michigan, you name it. That's from my hometown. You can hardly tell, okay. We also have our media distribution partners, for which the Jacksonville Jaguars, Miami Dolphins, and Detroit Lions send us content. We also have columnists there, and more importantly, the broadcast can be located there as well. We also have regular news on the website, weather, and national sports. It's a one-stop shop. Lots of good stuff on the Tribune. www.southfloridatribune.com gets it done. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And you want to reach me on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth. I'll be more than happy to connect with you there. If you want to hear the audio version of this broadcast, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let me go with that fast, since I go ahead and talk fast anyways, and I talk as fast as I drive. And again, don't tell anybody. Of course, I'm telling lots of people, all right? Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Guys, I got to tell you, it's been a lot of fun here. I look forward to seeing us build chemistry as we continue to work at this thing. But I have enjoyed this immensely. So it has been a privilege to have you guys on. But I believe that we can do better on every broadcast. I should point out before we get off the air, folks, okay, in fact, you know what, Alex, why don't you give everybody the COVID message, all right? I'm sure you have some words of wisdom for the COVID people, right?
Wash your damn hands.
What else?
Oh, yes. 6 feet, back, give me 50 feet. We know what day it is. Go ahead and party this weekend, but before you party on Saturday or after you party on Saturday, do your due diligence. Vote.
Mask up too, and if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, take Alex's advice real well, because I don't know if they'll defeat the Browns, but COVID-19 seems to have their number pretty good too. So had to throw that COVID reference in there. Now, I don't know if the Raiders will beat the Browns, but boy, they're struggling with COVID-19. And John Gruden and company have they've been guilty of being a part of those larger gatherings, and they haven't been masking up, which is what we do. So, and Ryan, I know you I should tell you that Candy and I went ahead and voted on Sunday after the 1 o'clock games, and we only had one person in front of us, and I know you were adamant about the voting thing when we spoke the last time. We got it done on Sunday, and it was a blast. We didn't have to wait in line. After the Lions got their victory, after the Packers got their victory, Candy and I went over there and got our spot, and we were voting within 10 minutes. The only thing I made a mistake on was there were 3 pieces of paper to vote on, and I did 2, and I had to be sent back to the booth to finish what I did. Other than that, I got it done. They got it all scanned in, and I did my DONE, done version of the voting process. So you guys have been an absolute blast here, and we look forward to doing it again. So on behalf of Alex Fleming, okay, the new kid on the block, okay, Ryan Skolrud, the young kid on the block, although we have a history together, along with the senior citizen group, me, the Motor City Man Mouth, probably the most amount of words I got in on this broadcast, but no problem. Good stuff. Don't mind referring to both of you guys all day long. So on behalf of my proud co-host, this is Scott Morgan Roth, the Motor City Man Mouth. Thank you for joining us here on Fantasy Football. We look forward to doing better next week. Thank you very much, guys. Job well done.